One final recording, one last moment captured forever. That's all that remains of these 6 individuals who unknowingly recorded their own final moments. These aren't just tragic accidents caught on camera. They're haunting reminders that tragedy can strike without warning. It was March 15th, 2017, when 23-year-old Colton Reeves made the decision that would claim his life. Working part-time at a local electronics store in Detroit, Colton spent most of his free time exploring abandoned buildings throughout the Midwest. His YouTube channel had only 847 subscribers, but he was determined to grow his audience by taking risks that more experienced urban explorers avoided. Colton had always been reckless by nature, the type of person who would climb higher, go deeper, and push boundaries that others respected. His co-workers at the electronics store knew him as someone who craved attention and validation, often sharing stories of his dangerous adventures to impress customers and colleagues alike. The Packard automotive plant had been on his list for months. The massive complex had been abandoned for over a decade, its concrete structure slowly crumbling under the weight of time and neglect. Warning signs surrounded the perimeter, but Colton saw them as suggestions rather than serious deterrents. At 2:30 p.m., he arrived at the derelict facility with his basic action camera, planning to explore the upper floors where few urbexers had ventured. He had researched the location online for weeks, studying floor plans and reading reports from other explorers who had documented the building's deteriorating condition. By 3:45 p.m., Colton had made his way to the 7th floor, his camera recording everything for his planned upload that evening. The concrete supports showed obvious signs of structural damage, with exposed rebar jutting from crumbling walls and ceiling sections that had partially collapsed years earlier. Despite the clear danger, Colton continued forward, drawn to a large hole in the floor that would provide the dramatic footage he needed to impress his small but dedicated audience. As he approached the opening to get the perfect shot, the weakened concrete beneath his feet began to crack audibly. The camera captured the exact moment when the floor gave way completely. Colton plummeted 70 feet through multiple floors, his body striking concrete debris and twisted metal on the way down. The action camera, thrown clear during the fall, continued recording from the ground level. The footage showed Colton's motionless body with compound fractures in both legs, his torso punctured by protruding rebar, and massive head trauma from the impact. He had died within minutes from internal bleeding and traumatic brain injury, alone in the abandoned factory. A homeless individual discovered the body the following morning and called 911. Emergency responders arrived to find that Colton had been dead for hours. The camera footage was recovered by police and used in their investigation, confirming that structural failure was the primary cause of death. His death received minimal media attention, mentioned only briefly in local Detroit news as another trespassing fatality in the city's abandoned industrial district. The Packard plant was subsequently secured with additional barriers, and Detroit authorities increased penalties for trespassing in condemned buildings. Colton's small subscriber base created a memorial video compilation using his previous uploads. His family, devastated by the loss, used the recovered footage to warn other young urban explorers about the very real dangers of exploring structurally compromised buildings without proper safety equipment. The tragedy served as a stark reminder that abandoned buildings are abandoned for good reason, and that no amount of social media fame is worth risking your life. His final video was never uploaded. It was August 22, 2018, when 29-year-old Alyssa Camden made what would be her final hike into Yosemite National Park. A freelance photographer from San Francisco, Alyssa maintained a modest Instagram account with 1,200 followers who appreciated her stunning landscape photography. She worked primarily for small local magazines and tourism websites, always seeking that perfect shot that would elevate her career. Alyssa was known among her friends as meticulous and safety-conscious, the complete opposite of thrill-seeking photographers who took unnecessary risks. She always researched her locations thoroughly, carried proper equipment, and followed park guidelines religiously. Her methodical approach had kept her safe during hundreds of hiking expeditions throughout California's wilderness areas. This particular week, she had been commissioned by a regional travel magazine to capture Yosemite's summer beauty. She had spent 6 days in the park, documenting various trails and landmarks, with the mist trail near Vernal Fall saved for her final morning shoot. At 5:30 a.m., Alyssa positioned herself along the trail to capture the sunrise, illuminating the waterfall. She had chosen this specific location after studying topographical maps and previous visitor photos, believing it offered the perfect vantage point for her assignment. Her camera equipment was set up on a sturdy tripod, with backup gear stored safely in her weatherproof backpack. What Alyssa didn't know was that recent heavy rains had saturated the granite cliffs above her position. The water had seeped into existing cracks in the rock face, creating unstable conditions that park rangers had noted but hadn't yet restricted access to. At 6:15 a.m., while adjusting her camera settings to capture the perfect golden hour lighting, her tripod-mounted camera began recording what would become her final moments. The footage initially showed the peaceful morning scene she had planned to photograph, with mist rising from the waterfall and early sunlight painting the granite walls. Then small pebbles began falling from the cliff face 200 feet above. Within seconds, the trickle became a cascade as water-saturated rock gave way. A granite boulder weighing approximately 800 pounds broke free, triggering a devastating rock slide that sent debris tumbling toward the trail below. The camera captured Alyssa's desperate attempt to run towards safer ground, but a basketball-sized rock struck her directly in the head before she could escape the danger zone. The impact caused immediate unconsciousness and severe skull fractures. Her camera, knocked over but still recording from 15 feet away, documented smaller rocks continuing to strike her motionless form for another 45 seconds. Park rangers discovered her body 3 hours later when she failed to check in at the designated time. The medical examiner determined that death was instantaneous from massive head trauma, with the initial rock impact proving fatal before the subsequent debris could cause additional injuries. Yosemite officials recovered the camera footage and used it to study rockfall patterns in the area. The incident led to the installation of early warning systems and temporary trail closures during periods of geological instability. It was November 8th, 2016, when 34-year-old Derek Fulton began what would be his final safety inspection at the Houston Petrochemical Refinery, where he had worked for 12 years. Known throughout the facility as meticulous and thorough, Derek took pride in his reputation as someone who never cut corners when it came to worker safety. His colleagues respected his methodical approach and attention to detail that had prevented countless accidents over his career. Derek had started as a maintenance technician straight out of high school, working his way up through the ranks to become one of the facility's most trusted safety inspectors. He was a family man with 2 young children, known for his calm demeanor and systematic approach to problem solving. His wife often joked that he inspected their home with the same thoroughness he brought to work. That morning, Derek was conducting a routine inspection of pressure vessels in Unit 7, wearing his standard-issue body-worn camera to record safety compliance for regulatory documentation. The inspection had been scheduled after monitoring equipment detected minor irregularities in pressure readings during the previous week. Management wanted a comprehensive visual assessment to ensure all systems were operating within safe parameters. The inspection began at 10 a.m., with Derek methodically checking valve systems and pressure gauges throughout the unit. His body camera, designed specifically for industrial environments and capable of withstanding extreme temperatures, recorded every step of his careful examination process. He documented each component visually, following protocols that had been refined over decades of industrial safety practices. Unknown to Derek, a hairline crack in a high-pressure steam line had been gradually expanding due to metal fatigue from repeated temperature cycling over several months. The crack was invisible to the naked eye and hadn't been detected by routine maintenance inspections. The pipeline carried superheated steam at 450 degrees Fahrenheit, under 600 pounds per square inch of pressure, At 10:47 a.m., Derek's inspection protocol positioned him directly adjacent to the compromised pipeline when the catastrophic failure occurred. The heat-resistant body camera recorded the exact moment the steam line ruptured, releasing a massive blast of superheated steam that engulfed his upper body instantly. The footage captured the initial explosion of steam as it tore through the air at tremendous velocity. Within seconds, Derek's protective equipment was torn away by the sheer force of the pressurized steam. The extreme heat caused immediate third-degree burns across 60% of his torso, arms, and face, while his work clothing began to melt from the intense temperature. The camera continued recording as Derek inhaled the superheated vapor, causing severe respiratory burns that led to rapid swelling of his airways and throat. The thermal shock to his system was immediate and overwhelming. Within 20 seconds of the initial rupture, respiratory failure began as his damaged airways could no longer function properly. The recording showed Derek collapsing as his body went into thermal shock. His heart stopped beating as the combination of severe burns, respiratory failure, and systemic trauma proved fatal. The entire sequence from rupture to cardiac arrest lasted less than 2 minutes. Emergency shutdown procedures were activated within 30 seconds of the incident. But Derek was pronounced dead at the scene from thermal injuries and respiratory failure. The body camera footage became crucial evidence in the subsequent OSHA investigation, revealing the exact sequence of events that led to the equipment failure. The incident resulted in industry-wide changes to steamline inspection protocols and mandatory thermal imaging requirements for aging pipeline systems. Derek's family received a substantial settlement from the company, which implemented new predictive maintenance technologies designed to detect metal fatigue before catastrophic failures could occur. His recorded final inspection became a training tool used across the petrochemical industry, demonstrating the critical importance of equipment monitoring and the devastating consequences when safety systems fail. It was June 14th, 2019, when 26-year-old Vanessa Lee prepared for what would be her final skydive at Paris Valley in California. Working as a marketing coordinator for a mid-sized advertising firm in Los Angeles, Vanessa used weekend skydiving as her escape from the high-pressure corporate world. With 89 jumps under her belt, she was considered an intermediate skydiver who took the sport seriously and followed all safety protocols. Vanessa had discovered skydiving 3 years earlier during a company team-building event. What started as a one-time thrill quickly became her passion and primary stress relief. Her co-workers knew her as detail-oriented and methodical, traits that served her well both in marketing campaigns and in skydiving. That Saturday morning, she was participating in a formation skydiving training session designed to improve her group flying skills. The session included 6 experienced skydivers, working on complex formations under instructor supervision. Vanessa wore a basic helmet-mounted camera to review her technique later, a common practice recommended by instructors. The jump was planned from 13,000 feet, with perfect weather conditions, including clear skies and minimal wind. Pre-jump equipment checks appeared completely normal, with Vanessa's main parachute, reserve chute, and automatic activation device all passing standard safety inspections. What nobody knew was that her main parachute had been packed by a recently certified rigger who had made a critical error in the suspension line configuration. The mistake was subtle enough to pass visual inspection, but would prove fatal during deployment. At 12,500 feet, the helmet camera recorded the formation practice proceeding exactly as planned. The group executed several formations successfully, with Vanessa demonstrating solid flying skills and maintaining proper positioning throughout the exercise. Vanessa deployed her main parachute at the standard altitude of 4,500 feet, following all established procedures. The helmet camera captured the initial deployment sequence, which appeared normal for the first few seconds. Then the parachute began exhibiting clear signs of malfunction as several suspension lines became tangled and the canopy took on a twisted, asymmetrical shape. Following her training, Vanessa immediately initiated standard malfunction procedures. She performed the required emergency sequence, cutting away her malfunctioned main parachute and deploying her reserve chute at 2,800 feet altitude. The reserve parachute deployed successfully, but became partially entangled with the still attached main parachute lines, significantly reducing its effectiveness. Instead of the controlled descent that should have followed, both parachutes created a configuration that provided inadequate deceleration. The final portion of the recording shows the ground approaching at dangerous speed before the camera cut out completely upon impact. Emergency responders reached the landing area within 15 minutes, but Vanessa had died from massive blunt force trauma sustained during the high-speed ground impact. The severely damaged helmet camera required data recovery specialists to retrieve the footage, but most of the recording was successfully recovered for investigation purposes. Analysis revealed the packing error that initiated the deadly sequence of events, leading to the rigger losing certification. Vanessa's family used the settlement to establish a scholarship fund dedicated to skydiving safety research, ensuring her death would contribute to preventing similar tragedies. It was January 19, 2015, when 31-year-old Shawn Barrett prepared for what would be his final dive into the Blue Springs Cave System in Florida. A certified cave diving instructor and marine biology graduate student, Shawn was conducting research for his thesis on underwater ecosystems. Known for his methodical approach and extensive safety training, he had logged over 300 cave dives without incident. Shawn worked part-time as a diving instructor while pursuing his master's degree at the University of Florida. His colleagues knew him as someone who never compromised on safety protocols, always triple-checking equipment and dive plans. He had grown up in Florida and developed a deep respect for the state's complex underwater cave systems. That afternoon, Shawn was conducting a solo scientific dive to collect water samples and document rare species populations for his research project. The dive plan called for a maximum depth of 75 feet with a 40-minute bottom time. He carried redundant air supplies and a basic underwater camera system designed to record his scientific observations. Recent heavy rains had altered the cave's water flow patterns, creating stronger currents than typical conditions. However, this change wasn't immediately apparent from surface observations, and the dive site remained officially open to certified cave divers. At 2:15 p.m., Shawn entered the water with full cave diving gear, including twin air tanks, primary and backup lights, and safety reels for navigation. His helmet-mounted underwater camera began recording as he descended into the crystal-clear spring water, documenting the limestone formations and aquatic life along the planned route. 22 minutes into the dive, the underwater camera recorded Shawn encountering an unexpected restriction in the cave passage that hadn't appeared on previous survey maps. The recent flooding had deposited debris and shifted sediment, narrowing the passage beyond what his twin tank configuration could safely navigate. The footage shows Shawn attempting to carefully maneuver through the tightened opening, but his equipment became wedged between limestone formations. As he tried to back out, his movement stirred up fine sediment from the cave floor, creating a complete silt-out that reduced visibility to absolute zero. The camera captured his increasing air consumption as stress elevated his breathing rate. Standard cave diving protocol required him to remain calm and work systematically to free himself, but the restriction had him trapped more securely than initially apparent. His attempts to reverse course only wedged his gear more tightly. The final 8 minutes of footage show Shawn's air supply gauges dropping to critical levels as he exhausted his primary air source and switched to his backup supply. Despite his extensive training and experience, the combination of physical entrapment and zero visibility created a situation from which he could not escape. The camera recorded his final moments as his backup air supply ran out, leaving him unable to breathe in the underwater cave. Death came from drowning when his air supply was completely depleted while still trapped in the restriction. A search team located Shawn's body 14 hours later when he failed to surface at the planned time. He was found still wedged in the restriction with his camera equipment intact and the entire incident recorded. Analysis revealed that recent flooding had deposited debris that narrowed the passage beyond safe navigation limits. The incident led to updated protocols requiring buddy system diving and mandatory flow condition assessments. Blue Springs implemented additional restriction markers based on lessons learned from Shawn's final dive. It was September 3rd, 2018, when 28-year-old Maya Ellington began what would be her final safety inspection at a mid-rise residential construction project in Seattle. A recent civil engineering graduate working as a construction safety coordinator for a small development company. Maya had quickly earned a reputation for her thorough documentation and proactive approach to workplace safety. Her colleagues respected her attention to detail and ability to spot potential hazards. Maya had graduated from the University of Washington just 2 years earlier with a degree in civil engineering, choosing to specialize in construction safety rather than traditional design work. She was known for her methodical personality and genuine concern for worker welfare, often staying late to ensure all safety protocols were properly implemented. That Monday morning, Maya was conducting a routine inspection of tower crane operations on the building's 12th floor. She wore a standard hard hat equipped with a basic safety camera designed to document OSHA compliance. The inspection was part of her weekly routine, ensuring that all lifting operations met safety standards. Wind speeds had been recorded at 32 miles per hour that morning, approaching but still within the crane's operational limits, according to manufacturer's specifications. The Weather Service had forecast increasing winds throughout the afternoon, but current conditions remained within acceptable parameters. Maya had noted minor irregularities in the crane's load movement patterns during the previous week's inspection. The crane operator had assured her that recent maintenance had addressed all mechanical concerns, and the equipment had passed its most recent certification inspection. At 12:15 p.m., Maya positioned herself on the building structure to observe crane operations as part of her standard documentation process. The safety camera began recording as the tower crane prepared to lift a 3-ton concrete panel from the ground level to the construction area above. The footage captured the initial lift proceeding normally, with the concrete panel rising steadily under the crane operator's control. Then, a sudden wind gust pushed conditions beyond safe operational parameters, causing the heavy load to begin swinging uncontrollably despite the operator's attempts to maintain stability. Within seconds, the excessive lateral forces created by the swinging load caused a catastrophic failure of the crane's slewing mechanism. The camera recorded the exact moment when the upper boom structure began to collapse, unable to withstand the dynamic stresses created by the out-of-control load. Maya's position on the building structure placed her directly in the path of the falling crane components. The safety camera captured her final moments before the massive steel boom struck the construction area with tremendous force. The impact was immediate and devastating, causing massive blunt force trauma that proved instantly fatal. The camera was thrown clear during the initial collapse, but was severely damaged when it struck the ground. The final seconds of footage became corrupted and largely unrecoverable, though enough data remained to document the sequence of events. Emergency responders arrived within 12 minutes of the collapse, but Maya had died instantly from the injuries sustained when the crane boom struck her position. The partially recovered safety camera footage became crucial evidence in the subsequent investigation. Analysis revealed that wind load calculations had been inadequate for the specific combination of load weight and weather conditions. The investigation also uncovered discrepancies in maintenance records. The incident resulted in citations against the construction company and led to stricter wind monitoring requirements for crane operations throughout Seattle. If these haunting final recordings left you shaken, click the next video now to witness even more chilling footage that was never meant to be seen. Never meant to be seen.